Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a time of stiff collars, horse-drawn cabs, and lace-trimmed nightgowns to the peculiar world of Victorian sleep. Picture this. It's a cold London evening, thick fog curling against the windows. You sit upright in a high-backed chair beside your bed, not quite ready to lie down because, frankly, you know what's waiting another night of eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling while the gas lamp outside flickers like it's taunting you. You're wrapped in layers of wool and cotton, your corset long unlaced for the night, and the faint smell of coal lingers in the air. Somewhere downstairs, the last footman finishes banking the fire, and upstairs, you prepare to drink a cup of something called lettuce water, because that, apparently, is the final frontier of hope. Of course, you probably won't survive. This, at least, not with your sleep schedule intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening in from a chilly attic or a cozy corner, bomb of the world, post your location and local time below. I always love seeing where these sleepy journeys find their homes. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You live in a time when insomnia isn't just common, it's practically fashionable. The ticking of the mantel clock echoes like thunder through your bedroom, loud enough to make your nerves twitch. It's not that you're particularly anxious, at least. Not in the hysterical sense that Dr. Pickering insists, but more that your mind won't stop cataloguing the day. What did Lady Winslow mean when she said your hymn was bravely short? Why did the cook burn the fish again? And did that lettuce water actually work last week? Or did you just happen to pass out from emotional exhaustion? Victorian nights are not restful by default. They stretch long, broken into odd intervals. Midnight might not even be bedtime. Social calls linger deep into the night. Gas lamps light the streets long after natural darkness falls, disrupting the body's innate sleep cycle. Many people go to sleep after midnight, wake around 4 or 5 a.m., have some cold meat or write a letter, and then return to bed for a second shift of slumber, yes to sleeps per night, separated by a philosophical break. That's how nights operate for your neighbors, and for you, it's both comforting and chaotic. Historians still argue whether this Bephossic sleep was a natural, human rhythm or just a Victorian accident caused by boredom and poor insulation. Tonight, you try to follow the pattern. The first sleep evades you, but you wait, hoping the body will remember. Outside, the hooves of a passing carriage clatter dully on wet cobblestones, growing fainter. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then goes silent, as if embarrassed. You sip from the cup of lettuce, water cooling on the side table warm, slightly bitter, and far from refreshing. Still, it's not unpleasant, and it gives you something to do with your hands, while your brain attempts a gentle shutdown. This isn't your first lettuce-related remedy. You've chewed leaves raw, steeped them in milk, and even once attempted a cold poultice which dripped tragically onto your embroidery. but the tea is the most bearable version. Boiled romaine or wild lettuce, strained into a cup, sometimes with a spoonful of honey, sometimes with an absurd dash of gin, depending on how quietly rebellious you're feeling. Your nightgown, while visually angelic in all its ruffled glory, is anything but sleek. Starched and feather-trimmed, it scratches in all the wrong places. But modesty, you're told, is more important than comfort. A lady must be prepared to answer the door at any hour, preferably looking like a Renaissance ghost with good posture. Above you, the candle gutters slightly. The wick flares, then shrinks back as if uncertain. Shadows of the bedpost stretch across the walls like long fingers, curling and retreating with every shift of light. Pull the covers higher, but the chill persists partly from the damp, partly from nerves. Because if sleep doesn't come soon, you'll begin to think again. And once thinking starts, there's no end. Tonight, you recall a dinner conversation about Countess Devonshire, who claimed she hadn't slept in 9 years. She simply reclined elegantly for a few hours, with her eyes open, refreshed by sheer willpower. You consider trying that, but after 5 minutes of reclining with conscious elegance, your spine begins to ache, and your hairpins dig into your scalp. Perhaps sleep truly is a luxury and a confusing one at that. You've read in one of your journals that Romans used lettuce not just for salads, but as a post-banquet sleep aid. A soporific plant, they claim, though whether that's science or wishful thinking remains debatable. You suppose if it worked for emperors, it's worth a try here in your own little empire of floral wallpaper and lace pillows. The candle is nearly gone now. You blow it out, letting the room settle into half-darkness. The coals in the fireplace have stopped glowing. All that's left is silence, broken only by the creak of old wood as the house settles around you. Somewhere beneath the silence, maybe in your own breath, is the beginning of rest. You hope, just as you begin to drift, maybe a full 5 minutes of near sleeper board creaks near the window. Not enough to alarm you, but just enough to remind you that the night isn't over. You shift positions, press your cheek to the cool, beside of the pillow, and think about the lettuce water again. Is it working, or is it just the ritual that calms you? Tomorrow, you'll try again, perhaps with a stronger brew. Or perhaps, though this feels scandalous to consider, you'll sneak down and try the housekeeper's brandy instead. But for now, the lettuce lingers on your breath, and the stillness stretches out like a warm blanket. You wake, or rather, you never quite slept. It's hard to say. Time blurs when you spend the night teetering on the edge of consciousness, occasionally dipping a toe into a dream only to snap back when the blanket shifts or a distant carriage rattles by. The candles have long since gone out, leaving the blue, soft blue-gray light of dawn leaking around the heavy curtains. Somewhere, the faint whistle of a coalman reminds you that the day insists on beginning, even if your body refuses to agree. Victorian life isn't designed for sleeping well, and deep down, you already know this. The world you live in churns like a restless machine, clanging and clattering around the clock. You sit up slowly, brushing down the wrinkled bodice of your nightdress, and think about how ironic it all is. For an era obsessed with rules, propriety, tan, domestic control, nobody has managed to figure out the one thing every human being needs: how to get a decent night's sleep. It wasn't always this way. You've read about the pre-industrial countryside, where farmers woke with the sun and fell asleep after a short supper, lulled by the quiet rhythms of candlelight and crickets. But here, in your sooty corner of urban England, everything changed. The gaslight on your street corner burns all night, its glow seeping through your curtains with an eerie steadiness. Machines in distant factories hum, gears spinning through shifts that never truly end. Even the clockmakers, once content to craft ornate timepieces for the occasional duchess, now mass produce alarm clocks to jolt mill workers from shallow slumber. At 4 a.m., and you're expected to sleep peacefully through all this. Not likely, even in higher society, where soft linens and silks are your reward for being a proper woman's leap, comes at a cost. Dinner is served absurdly late, often at 9 or 10 o'clock, with digestion making any immediate rest a fantasy. Then there's the conversation afterward, often a bit too lively for someone already desperate for bed. You're required to listen to Sir Bartholomew talk about his bad knees and the finer points of imported snuff while sipping a small, warm sherry and pretending to be interested. You once tried sneaking off early, claiming a headache, but your aunt called it improper and suspicious. According to her, a woman who shirks social duties will soon shirk moral ones. And from there, it's a short trip to poverty and scandal. So you stayed and listened and didn't sleep. Historians still argue whether the Victorians were actually more sleep-deprived than earlier generations, or simply more obsessed with talking about it. What is certain, however, is that they were uniquely plagued by attention. Between natural rhythms and cultural expectations, you are supposed to rise early to be industrious, stay up late to be sociable, nap in the afternoon if you're unwell, but never too long lest you appear idle, and ideally do all this in a corset. And the noise, oh the noise. You remember that time the milkman dropped a full tin at sunrise and woke half the square? Or the neighbor's daughter who insisted on practicing the violin before breakfast? Sleep is something to be fought for, not assumed. And your nights are a parade of disturbances, creaky floorboards, dripping faucets, wind-whistling window panes, and the peculiar, unpredictable cough of the housemaid in the room below. You once heard of a lady who wore wax earplugs, a luxury imported from France. You tried it, using candle wax in a pinch. It did dull the sounds, but also led to a mild panic attack when one plug got stuck, and you spent the morning half-dead, convinced you'd gone permanently Victorian-mad. Sometimes you fantasize about silence, true, solid, countryside silence, the kind with nothing but wind rustling through trees and the faint hoot of an owl. Then you remember that silence is its own kind of noises, especially when you're lying awake, wondering why everyone else seems to be sleeping but you. Still, your own schedule is starting to shift without you even realizing it. You've become, almost involuntarily, a creature of midnight. You pace your room barefoot, with a shawl around your shoulders. You read from the worn book of sonnets by the hearth. You nibble candied ginger. You sit by the window, watching for the first glimmer of morning, and when that fails, you turn to the letters. You're not sure when it started. Maybe a passing comment from a friend. Maybe something you read in the lady's domestic companion. Lettuce water, a decoction, you brew it like a potion. Leaves boiling water. Let it sit, then sip it in the dark, pretending to believe. And sometimes, just sometimes, it works. But was it the lettuce, or the quiet of making it? The sound of the kettle, the warmth in your hands? You'll never be sure. That's the magic, or perhaps the mischief, of Victorian sleep culture. You do these little rituals not because you know they work, but because not doing them would feel worse. And so, you move through the sleepless night like a ghost rehearsing the same play each evening. Sleep isn't a single moment, it's a landscape you wander into, if you're lucky, and you keep walking, even if the map keeps changing. Tonight, you promise yourself you'll skip the sherry. You'll drink the lettuce water a little earlier. You'll write in your sleep journal, even though the last entry just says, ugh, because in this era of clanging clocks, judgmental ants, and 2 a.m. shoe polishing noises, that cup of boiled salad might be the only part of the night you can control. You pull your shawl tighter and settle into the chair by the window, looking out at the flickering lamplight. Somewhere out there, someone else is also not sleeping, but they aren't talking about it, because you, as a Victorian lady, are among the few who can even mention sleep troubles without being accused of scandalous fragility. Still, even you have to be careful. A man who can't sleep is seen as overworked. A woman who can't sleep, she's one complaint away from being diagnosed with hysteria. You've heard it too many times from the doctor. Insomnia in women, he says. Stroking his chin like it's a ritual is often the symptom of a deeper imbalance in the nerves. What imbalance? Nobody knows. That's the delightful vagueness of 19th century medicine. It's a mystery wrapped in a corset. And the more you talk about it, the more delicate you're seen to be. Eventually, the diagnosis shifts from insomnia to something more. Inconvenient, the term hysteria gets tossed around like sugar cubes at tea, to sleepy, hysterical. Too energetic, hysterical. Irritated that your husband just bought another smoking jacket instead of paying for the leaky roof. Definitely hysterical. Historians still argue whether Victorian doctors truly believed in this wandering womb theory, or if it was just a convenient excuse to keep women quietly tucked under blankets, sipping warm milk and keeping their thoughts to themselves. You, however, refuse to be quietly tucked. You are wide awake with thoughts that are inconveniently sharp, and so you pace back and forth across a floor that creaks in the same 3 spots. You think about your own diagnosis, casually handed down like an unwanted heirloom. The doctor called it a touch of the nerves. You were prescribed warm baths, vigorous walking, and a short course of cod liver oil, all of which did nothing except make your skin smell like fish and your walks through Hyde Park considerably damper than expected. Then came the advice to avoid novels. They overstimulate the imagination, he warned, glancing disapprovingly at the open Brontë on your nightstand. You briefly considered switching to sermons or trade manuals, but then decided if you were to remain sleepless, you might as well enjoy the journey. Still, the problem with insomnia isn't just the absence of sleep. It's the way the world responds to it. The lady next door clucks her tongue whenever you mention it. Have you tried prayer? She asks, eyebrows arched. You have, of course, plenty of times. But even God, it seems, rests on Sundays. Others recommend wine or hot baths, or whisper something about laudanum that one's always said with a conspiratorial tone, like suggesting a bit of opium is the secret handshake of high society. And it is, at least for some. But you're wary. You've seen what it does to Lady Penelope, who now wanders her garden at odd hours, giggling at shadows and insisting the lilies can sing .so. Back you go to the kitchen, barefoot, quiet, like a thief in your own house. You boil more lettuce water, the leaves swirling like ghosts in the pot. It's almost meditative, the process. And you've come to enjoy this late-night ritual. You don't just sip sleep, you perform it. It's a small rebellion against the larger absurdity of your role. To look lovely, be gracious, entertain with wit, and somehow also collapse into peaceful, decorative unconsciousness by midnight. You once read that men's sleeplessness was blamed on overwork and ambition. They had too many ideas, too much responsibility. They burned the candle at both ends for the good of commerce and empire. Women, on the other hand, were thought to lie awake because they were frail, weak of constitution, too delicate for strong. Emotion, no mention of the 100 silent worries childbearing, social performance. The endless teetering balance of being likable without being loud. You worry too much, you're told, but only because you're awake to do so. In the morning, of course, you'll be expected to perform, to smile, sip tea, and perhaps mention breezily, didn't sleep a wink, but never mind. The performance is everything. A sleepy man is a gentleman poet. The sleepy woman is a potential invalid. Tonight, you try lying still again. You adjust the curtains, letting in a sliver of moonlight. Outside, the sky is a pale velvet, speckled faintly with stars. Inside, everything is hushed. Even the house seems to have given up its noises, resigned to your insomnia. There's a strange comfort in that. Oh, in the silence, in the fact that the world, for once, has stopped demanding things of you. The responsibilities will return with the sunrise. The footman will shuffle in, the bells will ring, and your day will begin, whether you've slept or not. But for now, in this pause between ticking seconds, you are free to sip your odd tea, to think your unruly thoughts, to float between memory and fantasy. You think about how your grandmother claimed to sleep like a stone every night. She also claimed that snails could cure warts, and that sneezing before breakfast foretold money. So, take it with a pinch of salt or sugar if you're still adding it to the lettuce water. Eventually, your limbs begin to tingle, not unpleasantly, but as if your body is remembering what it means to rest. You curl into yourself. The weight of the quilt feels a little more grounding now, less suffocating. Maybe it's the lettuce, or maybe it's that you've stopped trying so hard. Tomorrow, they'll ask if you slept well. You'll smile, say, "Better, thank you," and no one will question it, because the truth isn't the point, the performance is. And if sipping a bitter salad tea helps you survive another night of respectable sleeplessness, then so be it. The next morning arrives, like a clumsy butler, loud, awkward, and far too early. You hear the unmistakable sound of the scullery maid dropping something in the kitchen below. Not a plate, thankfully, just the metal lid of the sugar tin. But it's enough. Your eyes open. Sleep, if it visited at all, was brief and shallow, like a polite guest who didn't stay for tea. You sit up, your back aching in that peculiar way only antique mattresses can deliver. And you know instantly, this will be another long day, dressed in politeness, powdered cheeks, and yawns disguised as delicate sighs. The first thing you reach for is your dressing gown. The second, your face. It takes a few practiced gestures to smooth the weariness into something presentable. The morning ritual begins elegant in its structure, exhausting in its repetition. A quick wash with cool water, a bit of rose water to mask the tiredness, hair arranged precisely, and then the corset, of course. A stiff hug from society itself. As you tug at the laces, it strikes you how strange it is to prepare your body for the world in this way, binding yourself tightly after a night when even your thoughts refused to stay tucked in. You move slowly through breakfast, accepting weak tea and buttered toast without much enthusiasm. The dining room smells of old lace and lemon polish, and sunlight spills through the tall windows in elegant streaks, warming the edge of your plate. You nod at familiar faces across the tabulor: aunt, your cousin, the silent governess with eyes like fog. All of them seem well rested, or at least willing to pretend. It's the code of the house. You may talk about the weather, but not your weariness, not unless you're ill enough to be sent to the doctor, and even then, only if it's something more fashionable than can't sleep. And yet, beneath all this formality, something is shifting, quietly, but certainly. You've noticed it. In conversations, at afternoon teas, whispered between sips of Darjeeling and slices of seed cake. The other ladies are not sleeping either. They admit it in hushed tones, beneath wide hats and social smiles. One swears by a new type of pillow filled with dried lavender. Another has imported a Turkish rug that, she insists, absorbs negative energy from the soles of her feet. A third whispers of a tonic made from fennel and fennel alone. You nod sympathetically, even as you file it all away in your mental cabinet of peculiar remedies. Historians still argue whether the Victorian upper class truly suffered more sleeplessness than the working poor, or whether they simply had more time and more vocabulary with which to describe it. But in your world, insomnia is as common as embroidery, and far less decorative. At your embroidery circle that afternoon, the topic comes up again. Lady Eleanor, ever the daring one, mentions a peculiar extract made from lettuce and lemon rind that she found in a Parisian apothecary. "It's not unpleasant," she says, stitching a daisy into a napkin, "but it does smell faintly like a compost heap." You laugh politely, your fingers knotting the thread you were about to pull through. Lettuce again. It always circles. Back to lettuce. There's something vaguely absurd about this green, watery vegetable holding court in the world of sleep aids. And yet, here it is, again and again, cropping up in pamphlets, whispered anecdotes, and back pages of women's magazines. Household Words even ran a little column once about the virtues of common garden lettuce, gently steeped and consumed by moonlight. You're not sure if the moonlight is essential to the recipe or just poetic garnish. Still, the fact remains, lettuce water, though laughable, has become your strange ally in the night. It offers something no tonic, no poultice, no prayer has quite managed to achieve a brief illusion of control. Of course, not everyone approves. Your uncle, a proud man with a beard shaped like a Civil War monument, scoffs at all of it. Weakness, he calls it. Nerves are a fiction. Get more. Fresh air. Work the body, and the mind will follow. This from a man who has never worn a corset or suffered through a dinner party seated beside a baron who smells of anchovies. You wonder what he would do if he couldn't sleep. Probably hunt something. Evening arrives, and with it your apprehension builds quietly throughout the day, settling in your shoulders like a weight you can't quite shake off. Dinner is a drawn-out affair again, and your headache begins behind your eyes halfway through the third course. You press a napkin to your temple, smiling through the ache. No one notices, or perhaps they do and politely choose not to mention. Bit later, back in your room, you light the fire and consider your options. There are always options. Herbal blends, tinctures, old wives' tales. You once tied a sachet of hops to your bedpost, only to wake with a rash and a nose full of mildew. Another time, you tried an Egyptian sleepstone placed under your pillow. It disappeared mysteriously after the maid changed the linens, and you didn't have the heart to ask if she'd tossed it tonight. Though you're returning to what's familiar, you take out your little tin of dried lettuce leaves, carefully prepared weeks ago when the garden was still green and hopeful. You boil the water, inhaling the earthy scent. It smells like rain-damp soil and the faintest hint of bitterness. You sip, you wait, and as the fire crackles beside you, you think about how many others are likely doing the same across the country, ladies in drawing rooms, widows in boarding houses, debutantes with nerves, duchesses with too many responsibilities, and not enough rest, all sipping quietly, hoping this peculiar brew will carry them into sleep. You close your eyes. The fire flickers against your eyelids. You breathe in deeply, letting the warmth settle in your chest. For the first time today, your mind softens its grip. Not enough to sleep, not yet, but enough to stop fighting somewhere in the depths of that long Victorian evening. You lie back and stare at the ceiling, where the flicker of firelight throws slow-moving shadows like clouds drifting across a paper sky. The taste of lettuce water lingers on your tongue, slightly metallic, faintly green, almost like sipping a melted garden. It hasn't lulled you into unconsciousness, not quite, but it softened the edges, and in this dim hush, your thoughts begin to slow. It's in these moments, half floating between alertness and dreams, that you start to consider how long women like you have been chasing rest. Not just in the age of corsets and gaslight, but far earlier. You remember reading about medieval nuns who drank valerian steeped with honey before evening prayer. Ancient Roman matrons who sniffed poppy flowers at dusk. Even Cleopatra, if you believe the more dramatic scholars, slept with rose-scented oil pressed into her pillows and mandrake root clutched lightly in one hand. Historians still debate whether these remedies had any real effect, or whether the mere ritual of preparing them was what brought peace. After all, there's something undeniably calming about the act of creating, measuring, boiling, steeping, pouring as though you're crafting your own entry into the land of dreams. Dot in your world. Those rituals are your quiet rebellion. When the men talk of empire and industry and investments, you sip your bitter tea. When they lecture about discipline and resolve, you count the hours of the night with silent resilience. You've learned to treat your insomnia not as weakness, but as a secret something between you and the moon. You've learned to be a little amused by it. Because really, what kind of world expects its women to drift effortlessly into? Rest while corseted, powdered, stitched into expectation, and warned constantly not to think too much. You roll onto your side, quilt rustling softly, and stare out through the long window. Outside, the garden is quiet. The hedges have turned into dark shapes, and the trees sway gently in the wind like tall, drowsy sentinels. You imagine the plants, out there not just roses and ivy, but your lettuces too, growing under the same moon that now watches you. You wonder how something so bland, so often ignored on dinner plates, became a symbol of sleep in this strange little chapter of medical history. It started, they say, with the milky sap. Lettuce, you see, is part of the same family as opium poppies. Wild lettuce-lacked core. Virosa contains a white, sticky latex that oozes from its stalk when cut. In the 1800s, apothecaries began harvesting this sap, drying it and calling it lettuce opium. It wasn't addictive like its cousin, but it was said to bring mild drowsiness and even dull pain, especially in children or the faint-hearted. You couldn't find it in every chemist's cabinet, but if you knew who to ask quietly, you could probably get a little jar. You never tried the concentrated kind. Something about taking a substance called lettuce opium just feels a step too far into the absurd. But the idea that your sleepy garden companion has a long, weird history, being milked for its sedative powers, that delights you. Not all lettuce works, of course. Only the older, more bitter varieties, the ones that bolt in the sun and develop leaves so sharp They practically hiss at you. The delicate green ones served with vinaigrette. Useless. Pretty, but sleepy as a decorative cushion. You need the rougher kind. The kind that fought a little before being steeped. There's something almost poetic in that. The same society that insists on gentle, silent women is soothed only by the tough lettuces, the ones that refuse to be palatable without a little bitterness. It's fitting. You think back to the first time you ever heard of lettuce water. You were a girl then, listening to your grandmother as she told you bedtime stories that wandered between superstition and practical advice. "Drink your lettuce water," she said once, handing you a chipped mug. "And don't let your thoughts chase each other like mice." You hadn't understood it then, but now, those mice never stop running. You shift under the covers, adjusting your pillow. The fire is down to low embers now, glowing faintly in the grate. The room is a cocoon of warmth and darkness, and the silence presses close but gently, like a heavy velvet curtain. You exhale slowly. You've been through the cycle so many times. The early optimism, the first sip of tea, the hopeful lie down, the restlessness, the anger at your own body, the surrender, and now this moment of near stillness where sleep might finally offer its hand, palm down, waiting. You don't know why lettuce works if it works, whether it's the trace compounds, or the warmth of the cup, or the way it breaks your racing thoughts into smaller, more manageable pieces. You only know that when you do this, you feel safer, less alone, more like you're participating in something ancient and oddly hopeful. Your eyelids grow heavy, but you keep them open a little longer, just to feel the hush of it all. Somewhere far away, a clock strikes 2. You count each chime like it matters, like it holds your place in the timeline of sleep. You don't dread the morning quite so much now, because even if rest doesn't come tonight, you'll know you tried. You'll know you honored the quiet, respected the dark, and steeped your leafy offering with care. And you'll know that you're not the only one. Bet in houses across the city, behind curtains and shutters and thick velvet drapes. Other women are awake, holding their own mugs of wilted green, hoping that this strange little plant might deliver them. At last, into softness, morning arrives, not with triumph, but with a sigh. Your eyes open to a dim sky, and the creak of the house waking up around you. Somewhere downstairs, someone is already poking at the hearth with a poker far too enthusiastic for this hour. Your body feels groggy, not rested, exactly, but softened, as though your edges have been sanded down overnight. Whether the lettuce helped or you simply wore yourself into stupor is unclear, but either way, you made it through another night as you sit up and stretch beneath the quilts. You try not to think about the day ahead, the letters that must be written, the visit to Mrs. Dalrymple's drawing room for her insufferable salon, on comparative hymnology, the forced smile you must wear when someone asks how well you slept, and you lie because that's what polite women do. Still, the thought of the lettuce water gives you a flicker of comfort, not because it solved everything, but because it felt like something you could do. In a world where most choices are made for you, how you dress, what you eat, who you marry, how long you may stare out the window before someone gently calls. Your name steeping your own sleepy potion feels like a rebellious little act of agency. You rise slowly, pulling your dressing gown around you like armor. And as you walk to the washstand, your gaze falls on the teacup from last night, still faintly stained green, sitting next to the cooling ashes of the fire. You smile at it, not fondly, exactly, but with something approaching respect. It tried, just like you did, at breakfast. The conversation turns, as it so often does, to health. Miss Abernathy has acquired a new tonic that smells of burnt cinnamon and claims to quiet female distress. Someone else is reading a pamphlet about magnetism and has ordered a metal band to wear on her wrist. Lady Croft, ever the enthusiast, describes a new German physician who believes the shape of your skull can explain your emotions and your insomnia. You nod and murmur the right noises, but you're already planning a fresh batch of lettuce leaves for the night ahead. The Victorians, as you well know, are obsessed with solutions. Not just cures, but rituals, repetitive, hopeful attempts to fix the frayed edges of the mind. They do not yet have Freud, not properly, though whispers of his early theories are beginning to drift across the channel. The concept of dreams as psychological release, scandalous. Dreams, if they're discussed at all, are mostly interpreted as moral signs or warnings from God, especially when they come to women. That you might simply be stressed, overtired, or secretly angry is not something anyone is eager to accept. Historians still argue whether Victorian medicine truly wanted to heal women or simply to quiet them. Still, amidst all the strange treatments, bar and doctorly contradictions, the women you know cling to their own systems. You have a friend, Miss Weatherby, who swears by walking in a circle in her bedroom exactly 21 times before lying down. Another keeps a sprig of lavender under her pillow, replaced every Thursday without fail. One woman, rumor has it, prays not to God but to the moon, whispering her troubles in Latin through her open window. You don't ask her if it worked. That would ruin it. It seems everyone has their own small superstition, their own quiet rebellion against the tyranny of sleeplessness. Even the medical professionals are conflicted. Dr. Lemons, your family's physician, once told you to soak your feet in mustard water, drink a shot of warm port, and hum softly before bed. Stimulate the blood, he said, tapping his temple, and confuse the nerves into obedience. It sounded both medical and utterly made up. You tried it once. Your feet stung for hours, and the port gave you a headache. You never hummed again. But the lettuce that stays. What makes lettuce such a fascinating object of obsession isn't just its supposed sedative properties. It's what it represents, a paradox. It's soft and crisp, bland and sharp, nourishing yet faintly medicinal. It is, in essence, the perfect Victorian metaphor, a thing that looks like nothing, does almost nothing, and yet somehow becomes the center of an entire system of belief. The Victorians, After all, love contradictions. You wear black to signal grief, yet must smile politely during morning visits. You write sentimental poetry, but never speak of your own desires. You are expected to be strong yet delicate, clever yet deferential, present yet invisible. In such a world, it only makes sense that something as mild as lettuce becomes a medicinal tool. And it doesn't stop with the leaves. Some ladies go so far as to distill the seed. Lettuce seed oil, thick and slightly bitter, is rumored to be stronger, more direct. Apothecaries mix it with rosewater or almond milk and sell it in tiny glass vials tied with ribbon. You've seen them in shop windows, glinting like little promises of relief. You've even bought one, though you've yet to try it. There's something a bit too theatrical about it, like admitting that your body has finally betrayed you entirely. Instead, you stay with the water, the leaves, the ritual. Tonight, as the sun slides down behind the garden wall, you make the tea. Again, not because you think it will work, but because it's your way of saying, I am still trying. You steep the leaves. You hold the cup. You sit in the exact same chair, in the exact same spot. This, too, is part of the magical, at least part of the illusion. If sleep is ever going to come, it will arrive on familiar paths. You drink, slowly, carefully, dot the flavor. Is still as strange as ever, like drinking the ghost of a salad. But it's yours. Yours in a world where so little else is. The fire hums, the walls whisper, the night grows long again, and you, in your high-backed chair, with your lukewarm mug and your uncooperative thoughts, prepare to sail once more into the wide, restless ocean of sleep. You sit in your room again, night settled in thick as wool outside the window panes. The fire crackles faintly in the grate, giving off little sighs like a tired dog curling tighter into its bed. And there, in your lap, yes, once more is your trusty cup of lettuce water, lukewarm, slightly bitter, faintly ridiculous. But it's become a part of you now, like brushing your hair or muttering a complaint when the boiler goes clunk. Tonight, you're a little less hopeful than usual. Not defeated exactly, but dulled. You've read too many articles lately, those modern pamphlets fluttering out of London that claim lettuce's effects are purely psychosomatic, that it's all suggestion, not science. No better than water, one dry physician wrote, and often less tasty. You disagree, of course, but something in his dismissiveness sticks. It gets under your skin. Historians still argue whether women in the Victorian era were participants in their own medical autonomy, or simply passive subjects of whatever quackery was fashionable that year. But as you hold this silly little cup, you know one thing with certainty. This ritual is yours, even if it doesn't send you drifting into dreams on a featherbed of botanical bliss. It gives you structure, a frame, a little rope ladder to climb when your thoughts get too loud. You blow on the steam, SIP slowly, and let your mind wander, like an old dog off-leash, but still sniffing the same hedgerow. And it drifts, as it often does, to the others, because you are not alone in your lettuce endeavors. There are communities, both public and private, built around the Victorian sleep obsession. Tea, salons, and herbalist circles, and your favorite newsletters passed between friends, handwritten or typed, filled with dreamy experiments and gentle rants. One edition from a cousin in Derbyshire begins, "My latest brew involved lettuce, lavender, and regret." Another from a friend in York describes lying awake for hours, only to fall asleep standing up the moment she started folding laundry. "I might try laundry as a sleep aid next," she writes. You keep a stack of these letters in your sewing drawer. They feel more useful than any doctor's note. Some nights you try their suggestions. A cold rag on the forehead, counting the chiming bells of passing carts, chewing fennel seeds slowly, like a cow with secrets. And once a night you don't talk about often you lay beneath your bed with a candle lit, to reverse the energy in the room, as a friend claimed. You lasted 7 minutes before you gave up and crawled out, dusty and annoyed. But even that misadventure had a strange comfort, because it reminded you that there is a whole network of tired women out there, all performing these same gentle rituals, whispering old advice down the candlelit corridors of your shared sleepless lives. Tonight's brew is standard, romaine, boiled until soft, steeped for 12 minutes, poured into a chipped cup. You skipped the honey to cloying, just the plant, water, and you. You sip dot, and somewhere outside, a fox screams in the dark. Or maybe it's a child's dream turned briefly loud. Hard to say in this weather. Victorian cities were noisy even at night. Horses still clip-clop through the streets. Lantern lighters walk their rounds. Couples argue through thin apartment walls. Steam whistles sound, groaning like lonely ghosts. You imagine other women like you, wealthy, middle class, working, widowed, stirring in their beds, listening to the same sounds. One of them might be making lettuce water too. Another could be reciting Psalm 428 into her pillow. Another lies still, eyes wide, counting the cracks in the ceiling and thinking about death. It's almost comforting, this shared insomnia. A sisterhood of the sleepless, united across drawing rooms and factory roads and sculleries. You don't envy those who sleep easily. You pity them a little. What do they know of the strange beauty that comes when the world is silent and you are your only companion? Still, you'd trade it all for 8 uninterrupted hours. You take another sip. You've learned to appreciate the bitter. There's a philosophy you've picked up over time. Call it bedtime stoicism. You don't expect miracles anymore. You don't expect the lettuce to transform your life or grant you visions of peace. You simply expect it to be there, to offer structure, to be warm and present and slightly weird. And that's enough. Because in the absence of sleep, structure is salvation. You've begun journaling at night. Nothing profound, just lists of thoughts. The things you didn't say that day. The things you wish you could forget. Sometimes you sketch little leaves, odd faces. Once, a lettuce leaf with eyes and a monocle. You named it Sir Sleep's Letter. He guards your journal now, sketched proudly. On the inside cover, you wonder, as you turn the cup in your hands, what people centuries from now will say about this habit. Will they laugh at your lettuce like you chuckle at ancient Romans who bathed in gladiator blood for vigor? Will they shake their heads at how the Victorians romanticized sleep, yet made it nearly impossible with corsets, clocks, and overcooked meat, probably? But that's fine. You're not doing this for them. You're doing this for yourself, for your tired bones, your overoccupied mind, your stubborn body that refuses to cooperate with the universal schedule of darkness followed by rest. You drain the last sip. The cup is warm in your hands, but the heat is fading. You glance toward your bed's high wooden headboard, the perfectly turned down sheet, the hint of lavender sachet at the corner. You're not ready to go there yet. Not until your eyes start to tug downward, until your body gives that familiar sigh that means yes, maybe now. Until then, you sit, you wait, you listen to the silence that isn't truly silent. You exist in this odd pocket of the night, along with all the other lettuce drinkers and ceiling watchers and midnight SKE Tetris. And when you finally do lie down, when the pillow welcomes you back like a slow wave on the shore, you do it with calm acceptance, not with hope, not with despair, but with the quiet conviction of someone who has mastered the art of trying. Because sleep, like lettuce, is rarely perfect, but it's still worth growing. The days are growing longer now, though your sleep hasn't noticed. Mornings creep in with their early brightness, the sun sliding between the curtains like an overconfident guest arriving before you've cleaned the parlor. And once again, you rise groggy, blinking, with the faint taste of boiled greens still haunting your tongue. By now, the lettuce routine is more than a habit. It's a rhythm, a companion. You've experimented with timing, sipping just after dusk versus the witching hour, drinking while standing versus sitting cross-legged on your woven rug. None of it changes the outcome in any measurable way, but each version feels different, like tuning a song to a different key. And sometimes that slight change is all you need to get through. Tonight, you're considering adding music, not Chopin, though that would be the obvious choice. No, something less cultured, more human. Perhaps the rhythmic creak of your mother's rocking chair, or the faint drumming of rain on the parlor roof. You remember being a child and listening to your father snore, like a ship groaning at anchor, oddly comforting. There's something deeply primal about that background noise, something ancient. You're not the first generation to turn towards strange things to summon sleep. The ancient Egyptians apparently stuffed their pillows with fragrant herbs and wore amulets shaped like eyes. Medieval monks were told to read the Psalms until they could no longer stay awake, at which point sleep was seen as divine submission. And early Chinese apothecaries sometimes ground up pearls into powder and drank them with hot tea before bed. Because what says goodnight better than sipping someone's future necklace? Historians still debate whether such rituals were believed as true medicine, or simply inherited customs passed down like lullabies. No one fully understands. And then, of course, there's lettuce. more specifically, Lactuca virosoild lettuce. Not the cheerful romaine or timid iceberg you find at dinner, but its distant cousin, known sometimes as opium lettuce. It's spikier, darker, and considered to have stronger effects. In Victorian herbals, it was listed as both a sedative by and a pain reliever. Apothecaries would dry the milky sap and sell it in tiny glass jars, often under the name lettuce opiata title. That sounds like a parody, but is entirely real. You once came across a pamphlet describing how to extract it yourself. The process was elaborate. Slice the stem, collect the white liquid, let it dry into resin, then dissolve it in wine or water. You never tried it mainly because it sounded like something that would accidentally summon a ghost. But it's comforting to know that even your mild, soggy cup of green water has a bolder cousin in the family tree. That night, as you sip, you think about wild lettuce and the women who must have sworn by it. Were they like you? Were they tired, hopeful, quietly frantic? Did they whisper the names of herbs as they boiled them like spells? Did they listen to the resin fizz in wine and wonder if this would finally be the night? You imagine them women, with candlelit faces and soot-lined hearths, performing these little midnight rituals, steeping, stirring, sipping, waiting. A lineage of sleep seekers stretched across time, each believing, just for a moment, that lettuce might be the answer. But even the most devoted among them would have faced critics. The Victorian medical journal were full of warnings, some bordering on hysteria about herbal remedies. Unscientific, they cried, potentially dangerous. One particularly dramatic editor claimed that wild lettuce extract could erode the feminine faculties. You're not sure what those are, but you assume they involve embroidery and weeping politely at poetry readings. Still, the resistance to natural remedies was rarely about danger. It was about control. Doctors didn't like when women treated themselves. Too much agency, too much independence. If a lady could solve her own insomnia with something plucked from her garden, what else might she try without permission? Education, voting. No, better to prescribe laudanum, patent medicines, sleep powders with ingredients unpronounceable and effects barely understood. Better to keep the mystery in male hands. Yet, despite that pressure, the lettuce endured. Quiet, reliable, stubbornly green dot. Your own stash now lives in a small tin on the kitchen shelf. You dry the leaves yourself slowly over days until they're crispy and feather-light. Then you crumble them into a jar with a label you made using your best calligraphy, the Night Garden. It makes you feel like a Victorian apothecary in training, a sleepy witch with too much time and not enough dreams. Sometimes you think about selling it, just a few jars, to other women like you. You'd wrap each tin in brown paper, tie it with twine, and include a note that says, "This won't fix you, but it might give you something gentle to do while waiting." You imagine shelves lined with those tins, homes where your sleepy lettuce becomes part of someone else's evening routine, a shared ritual stretched across unknown distances. It's funny, isn't it? that the most unassuming planter salad staple, a dinner plate afterthought, might become a symbol of resistance. Not loud, not aggressive, but persistent. A way of reclaiming nights from the jaws of worry. A way of saying, I will not suffer in silence. I will make tea instead. You drain the last of your cup. The leaves have done their part, whether medicinally or metaphorically. It doesn't matter anymore. The weight behind your eyes is growing. The air in the room feels thicker, more tender. You close your eyes for a moment and think about the field where lettuce first grew, some damp patch of earth under a summer sky. You imagine it curling upward, leaf by leaf, soft and strong, quietly blooming in defiance. That's what you want to be, a little leaf growing toward sleep. The rain returns with a whisper to nightlight and fussy, like a cat pawing at your windows. You welcome it, even if it means another damp corner in the ceiling, and that peculiar smell your parlor rug develops when the wind blows in sideways. Still, there's something about the sound drizzle threading itself through the silence that pairs beautifully with your nightly brew. Lettuce, water, and weather. A pairing no one asked for, but here you are. You reach for your usual teacup, the one with the faded violets around the remand. Let the ritual begin again. Boil, steep, wait. The dance you know by heart. The leaves swirling in hot water remind you of fallen feathers, sinking slowly in a pond. They don't do much, really, but they try. And maybe that's the point. It's at this moment that you remember a strange claim from one of your clippings, that lettuce, in ancient times, was not always a symbol of calm. The Greeks, oddly enough, once associated it with death. Not nightmares or ghosts, but the quieting of life itself. Lettuce was served at funerals, used in rituals meant to ease the spirit's passing. It was believed to silence the libido, cool by the body, and even stop desire. The ultimate chill-out food in every sense. Historians still argue whether the Greeks revered lettuce for its calming properties, or merely feared its power to subdue. Either way, you're sipping a plant with a rather colorful resume. From funeral food to fashionable sedative, lettuce has seen things. And in Victorian times, your time, that symbolism twisted again. Lettuce became the humble servant of sleepless women. Doctors recommended it cautiously. Mothers passed recipes down with knowing looks. Don't overboil, or it loses its strength, they'd warn. Though no one ever explained what strength lettuce could possibly lose. You once tried a different method, based on a newspaper suggestion from 1857. Rather than boiling the leaves, it advised soaking them in cool water overnight and sipping the liquid at room temperature the next evening. For a gentler sleep, it claimed. The result? It tasted like regret and cellar mildew. You tossed it halfway through and returned to your kettle with renewed loyalty. Some nights, you wonder if your sleep problems are simply inherited, passed down like freckles or bad knees. You remember your grandmother pacing the garden at dusk, shawl around her shoulders, muttering to herself. "The moon's too heavy tonight," she'd say. As a child, you thought she meant gravity. Now, You wonder if she just couldn't rest under its bright eye. There's something timeless about insomnia. Not just the condition, but the way it folds itself into your personality. The little habits it creates, the thoughts it brings to your doorstep like stray cats. You've come to know the shapes of your own worry, how it starts in the chest, rises behind the eyes, and hums like a too-eager violin string. So the lettuce becomes more than a cure. It becomes an anchor, a small act of care. You choose the leaves carefully now. You rinse them gently, like washing a child's toy. You heat the water just shy of boiling. You sit in your corner chair and wrap your shawl tightly, letting the steam fog your glasses. The cup warms your hands as you sip, and your shoulders drop by a fraction. Not from sleepiness yet, but from the comfort of doing something, even if that something feels like nothing at all. There's a page in one of your grandmother's old books, stuck between herbal lore and recipes for bee-sting poultices, that talks about night hygiene, not cleaning your teeth or face, but preparing the spirit for rest. It suggests speaking aloud a list of things you've released for the day: guilt, envy, resentment, regret. You tried it once. You released 23 things and added a 24th just for good measure. The memory of a soggy lettuce infusion that nearly ended your faith in vegetables. You don't speak the list out loud anymore, but you think it, and that counts. Tonight, your list is shorter. You release the shame of forgetting your friend's name mid-conversation. You release the envy of that neighbor who sleeps like a slab of marble. You release the worry that you'll never sleep again. It's a comforting lie. You stare at the fire as it hisses softly. One log falls, letting out a yawn of sparks. You like to think the house sleeps when you can't, that the walls dream of warmer years and quieter feet. Outside, the rain has grown steadier, the kind that seeps into everything, the kind that fills the cracks in the stone walk and makes the garden smell like old roots. If you opened the door right now, you could probably smell the mint growing wild beneath the windowsill. Wet mint and damp earth, nature's version of a lullaby. You glance at your bed. It looks smug tonight. You can almost hear it say, "You'll try again, and I'll resist you." You ignore it for now. Let it wait. You're not done with your tea. Victorian etiquette books often advised ladies to retire early, avoid excitement before bed, and never discuss politics past 9 o'clock. You find this hilarious, since your best ideas always arrive at 11:45 p.m. and half of them involve challenging government policy or sewing a better corset. Still, you appreciate the sentiment. Avoid excitement. Embrace calm. Bathe the mind in quiet. And tonight, that's exactly what you do. You sip the last of your lettuce water, feel the slight bitterness coat your tongue, and listen to the rain whisper stories you can't quite make out. Then, gently, you rise. You blow out the candle, watching the flame flicker its last breath, and you step toward the bed with a quiet defiance that says, maybe not sleep, but peace, at least. Because sometimes that's all the lettuce can promise. Your pillow smells faintly of lavender and dust, one on purpose, the other inevitable. You shift under the covers, arranging yourself into that particular constellation of limbs that feels just barely restful. Somewhere downstairs, the last creaks of cooling furniture sigh like sleepy ghosts. And still, your eyes remain open, tracking invisible shapes in the dark. This is the moment, the hinge point of the night. You've done everything right. What? Your lettuce, sipped it slowly. Read something light and unthreatening, that short story about a Victorian governess who falls in love with a wallpaper. And still your body refuses to surrender. It's like waiting for a train you're not sure is coming, but holding your breath in case it is. And so you let your mind wander, gently, carefully, like a curious raccoon pawing through an old drawer of memories. You think about the women who made sleeplessness an art. Queen Victoria herself was rumored to suffer from restlessness. She had the finest mattresses, the softest linens, but reportedly still paced her chambers in the early hours, haunted not by lettuce shortages, but by grief and obligation. Historians still debate whether she truly suffered from insomnia or simply refused to sleep until she had written every letter, signed every decree, and stared at every portrait of Albert until her eyes blurred. In contrast, working-class Victorian women had fewer options and fewer luxuries. Their insomnia was rarely poetic, it was physical. Aches from long days of scrubbing, cooking, nursing. Their sleep was stolen by labor, not melancholy. And so, any moment they could claim any quiet corner with a cup of something warm became precious, even if that cup tasted like boiled grass. And those cups were passed around. Lettuce water wasn't always a solo ritual. In certain towns, it became a kind of communal secret. Women sharing tips over laundry lines. Boil it longer. Add a drop of vinegar. Mix it with a spoonful of honey, but not too much. Little tweaks, tiny acts of care, shared like folklore. You remember reading about one village in Devon where the apothecary sold sleeping lettuce cakes. They weren't cakes, really more like soggy biscuits infused with lettuce extract and sugar. They were baked soft and chewy, supposedly to be chewed slowly while listening to the church bells ring 9 times. The ritual mattered more than the recipe, and locals swore by it. Historians still argue whether these cakes had any true soporific properties, or whether the routine, the bells, the chewing, the certainty was what actually lulled the mind. After all, the brain loves patterns, routines, repetition, a kind of behavioral hypnosis. That's what your own ritual has become now. Not just tea, but a series of quiet decisions. The slow walk to the kettle, the folding of your shawl, the gentle murmur of the cup as you set it down. These small movements feel like keys turning in invisible locks, one step closer to peace. But still, the night stretches on, and sleep has yet to arrive. You try counting backward from 100. You try imagining a staircase, each step leading deeper into a foggy, serene nothingness. You get to step 6 before thinking about the hole in your left sock. You try again, This time, you reach step 4 before remembering that one time in 1849, when you embarrassed yourself at a garden party by complimenting someone's morning hat. It had feathers. You thought it was festive. Sleep is cruel like that. It opens filing cabinet of your life and throws old receipts at your face. So you give in. You sit up. You light the candle again, and you reach for your lettuce. This isn't defeat. It's just round 2 tonight. You steep it longer. Let the bitterness intensify. Let it taste like a dare. You sip it slowly and lean back into your chair, watching the shadows on the wall stretch and soften. In this quiet space, your thoughts change shape. They stop racing and start drifting. You imagine your bloodstream accepting the lettuce's influence, like an overworked maid finally accepting a warm bath. No questions, no resistance, just permission to let go. You think of your own little garden, the patch of soil behind the house where your lettuce grows quietly beneath the moon. You never thought much of gardening before. Too much bending, too much patience. But there's something comforting about tending to something that expects nothing. Lettuce doesn't need praise, just dirt, water, and time. And when you harvest it, you feel like you've done something meaningful. You're not just gathering leaves, you're bottling calm, brewing silence, preparing peace. There's a soft dignity in that. You take another sip, and this time the warmth spreads faster. Your neck loosens, your knees unclench. Even your jaw ways holding just a bit of stubborn tensions starts to release. The candle flickers lower, dancing quietly, as if swaying to a lullaby only it can hear. Victorian ladies often wrote in their diaries about the quiet war against sleeplessness. Not dramatic battles, but subtle ones. One entry you once read, written in pencil and barely legible, said, "The night took hours from me again. I gave it tea, and still it asked for more." You feel that you're giving the night what it wants, your stillness, your surrender, your soft resignation. But maybe just maybe it will give you something back. The room begins to blur a little round the edges, not from the lettuce, perhaps, but from the patience, from the slow drip of evening turning into night, from the sacred act of doing nothing. Intentionally your body, at last, begins to listen. It leans toward sleep like a sunflower to dusk. You close your eyes, not demanding anything, just offering the moment. And there, in the soft silence of your own making, you wait. It's sometime past the second hour of stillness, when your eyes flutter open, again not with urgency, but with that half-aware sigh of someone who's not quite convinced sleep is worth the trouble. You shift beneath your quilt, heavy now with your body's warmth and the faint weight of time, and you listen. There's no ticking clock, no chiming bell, just the breathing of the house. You glance toward the window. The curtains are pulled, but the moon sneaks through anyway, tracing silver ribbons across the floorboards. You imagine that somewhere a Victorian lady just like you is doing the same, watching the moon. wondering if the lettuce will work this time, considering the merits of warm milk versus warm cabbage water, and weighing the risks of mixing the two. Spoiler, done. Your mind wanders to an old anecdote from an 1870s periodical that claimed lettuce was only truly effective if harvested under a waning moon. The bitterness aligns with the body's need to release, it said. Completely unverifiable, naturally, but deliciously poetic. Historians still argue whether this idea came from folk knowledge or sheer late-night desperation. Either way, it makes your last harvest feel more mystical than it probably was. You sit up slightly, not to get up, heavens no, but just to resituate. Your spine feels like it's made of candle wax, a little bent, mostly soft. You pull the quilt tighter, take one slow breath, and let your head tip toward the pillow again. It's a small motion, but one laced with hope. Sleep, at this point, is like a skittish cat. If you look directly at it, it bolts. But if you stay still and pretend you don't care, it might curl up beside you. So you feign indifference. You think about trains again, or maybe fog, something slow and hazy and slightly Victorian. That's when you remember a curious trend among sleepless society ladies in the 1880s. They began keeping dream journals, not for dreams, but for the absence of dreams. These entries were almost performance art pages, describing the color of their insomnia, the texture of their wakefulness, or the imagined dialogues they had with their own thoughts. At 2:47 a.m., you read one once that began with, "Dear, sleep, you traitorous lover," and ended with an illustration of a lettuce leaf in a top hat. You admire the commitment. Some swore by painting as a cure. Others tried embroidery in low light, stitching white thread on white fabric. Quiet rebellion pays against chaos. You once tried that yourself. It ended with a small stab to the thumb and a very lacy piece of cloth that looked vaguely like a disgruntled cabbage. You still keep it, of course. Every insomniac deserves a badge of honor. And here's the strangest thing. You're not angry about being awake. Not really. You've made peace with these hours. They belong to no one but you. The rest of the world slumbers unaware. But you, nestled in your private quiet, sip your lettuce and write poems in your head. Bad ones, mostly, but they rhyme. You remember a line you made up once. Sleep is a door. I knock on politely. It opens at 4, just once, nightly. Not exactly Byron, but it comforts you. It reminds you that you're not broken, just differently scheduled. Speaking of doors, you recall a rather fringe belief held by certain spiritual Victorians that sleep was not rest, but travel. That in slumber, the soul wandered through another plane. Lettuce, they believed, acted as a kind of guide, a gentle usher for the dream body, making the passage smoother, so the spirit doesn't stumble. One pamphlet said. Historians, predictably, still argue whether this was genuine belief or just very clever marketing by lettuce growers. But you rather like the idea that your body lies here, swaddled in shawls and shadows, while your spirit glides down a moonlit corridor lined with whispering leaves, a kind of dreamy ghost politely haunting your own imagination. The candle has nearly died now. The flame leans sideways, a sleepy dancer bowing out. You watch it flicker. You don't move to relight it. Instead, you stretch your toes beneath the quilt until they find the cool patch near the edge. Heaven. You wrap your arms around the second pillow, not to hug, really just to anchor yourself. There's something oddly luxurious about the weight of fabric and the hush of night. Like sleeping in velvet, you close your eyes again, not forcing, just allowing. The lettuce has done its job as far as it can. Your body feels slower now, heavier in a comfortable way, as if gravity has become slightly more affectionate, not pushing you down, just holding you close. And even if sleep doesn't arrive soon, you realize something important. You're no longer fighting. There's no resistance, no desperation, just a willingness to exist quietly in the pause between thoughts. That's where sleep always begins, isn't it? In the space between dot and so you rest, eyes closed, breath long, thoughts dimmed, not asleep, not yet, but very close. By now, your breath moves like an old lullaby, hurried, rhythmic, full of soft pauses. You barely notice the gentle swaying. Put up your chest beneath the blankets. It's a slow tide now, pulling in, drifting out, each cycle quieter than the last. The room has become your cocoon, insulated with shadows, wool, and the vague scent of boiled lettuce. It's a strange mix, but oddly comforting, like staying overnight in the greenhouse of a very sleepy botanist. You don't even open your eyes. This time, there's no need. The stillness is enough. Outside, the world is velvet. Even the cats that rule the streets by night have curled into doorways or garden nooks. Somewhere, a milkman is tying his boots in silence, and here you are, wrapped in quilted dreams, teetering on the edge of real rest. It's here that your mind wanders to the peculiar role lettuce played in not just Victorian women's nighttime routines, but their broader lives. It wasn't just tea. It was lotions, facial tonics, and even handwritten prescriptions from lady herbalists who treated everything from anxiety to restless wounds. A thoroughly unscientific phrase, but they were big on those. Lettuce, they insisted, had calming energies. And while most of it was based on observation rather than evidence, it was enough to build an entire culture of trust around a leafy green dot, one fringe London. Apothecary even offered lettuce dreams, a nightly tincture for the nervous and lonely. That's a direct quote. It came in a cobalt blue bottle with a cork stopper and a little poem printed on the label. Take thee this drop in water or wine, and may your slumber be soft as brine. They tried so hard. Historians still argue whether this concoction had actual sedative effects, or if it was just brand-forward chamomile with a splash of vinegar. Either way, it tells you something crucial about the human spirit wheel. Believe in almost anything, as long as it comes with a nice label and a promise of peace. And frankly, who can blame us? You think about peace now, not the big, dramatic kind written about in history books or inscribed on marble monuments. No, you mean the tiny, sneaky kind. The kind you can barely detect unless you're really still. Like the silence after a kettle's whistle fades, or the hush that fills a room when everyone you love has fallen asleep. That kind of peace. You realize now how hard Victorian women worked to earn it, with their restrictive dresses, their social constraints, their daily expectations wrapped in corset laces and etiquette books. Sleep was a rebellion, a tiny declaration that their time, at least for a few hours, belonged only to them. Even the upper-class ladies, cloistered in velvet parlors and lace-covered boudoirs, fought for this private time. One baroness in 1864 reportedly demanded her lady's maid prepare 2 cups of lettuce infusion every evening, one warm to drink and one chilled to dab across her temples. She said the contrast confused the demons, probably just made her forehead cold, but still points for creativity. You smile at that. Your own demons tonight feel unusually cooperative, tired, perhaps from pacing earlier. Or maybe they've been lulled by routine, by soft candlelight and the floral sigh of old cotton sheets. You shift again, barely, just enough to feel your limbs remind you they exist. They're not demanding movement, just acknowledging presence. Your spine curves into the mattress like it's known it all along. Your neck softens into the pillow, the way wax yields to flame. Everything is starting to dissolve, not disappear, lose its sharp edges. The line between night and morning is thinning, but you're still nestled in the center of it, unbothered by the approaching light. You've carved out your space, higher among the old stories, the strange rituals, the curious teas, and the lace-veiled sighs of generations who struggled to close their eyes. And maybe, just maybe, they're watching over you. Not in a ghostly, shiver-inducing way, more like in the way your grandmother might have gently, from the chair by the window, knitting something warm without saying a word. You think of them sipping lettuce water by candlelight, scribbling thoughts in notebooks, dabbing oils behind their ears, repeating gentle mantras to themselves. I am soft. I am safe. I will sleep. And you borrow that thought for yourself now. Say it in your mind like a prayer or a wish. You are soft. You are safe. You will sleep, even if not now, then soon. And if not tonight, then tomorrow. Because the night is long, but so is your patience. You've earned your rest in quiet ways, in boiled leaves and forgotten folklore. In the sacred hush of doing absolutely nothing, you feel your mind start to loosen, gently, like an old ribbon untying from a letter. Thoughts fold inward. Breathing deepens. The story grows slower. You are ready. Not because the lettuce demanded it or the candlelight insisted, but because your body finally feels like a place you can safely rest. And so you do. You don't even notice the exact moment your thoughts stop forming words. They just drift. Somewhere between breath and memory, you begin to blur again. There's no jolt, no sudden drop, just the sensation of fading, like ink in warm water. You're floating now, tethered only by the soft thrum of your breath and the occasional lazy blink of your inner eye. You don't really think anymore. You remember slowly, like sifting through old letters in a sunlit attic. You remember how the Victorian women built entire routines around the act of falling asleep, rituals so specific they bordered on choreography. Some would hum lullaby, passed down through generations, barely audible whispers against the pillow. Others would repeat sleep spells, which were essentially poems, except whispered thrice beneath the breath. And if all else failed, there was always the lettuce poultice cold, wet leaves wrapped in linen, pressed gently to the temples like a promise of peace. Not exactly glamorous, but earnest. One diary entry from a Yorkshire woman in 1882 read, "Tonight I prayed to Saint Dymphna, then laid lettuce upon my brow. My thoughts ran like children in a field, but eventually the quiet took me. It's oddly beautiful." Historians still argue whether such methods held any true power or were simply distractions wrapped in cotton and hope. But does it matter, really, if it worked? The candle, if you left it burning, is long gone by now. Just a trail of wax curled like a question mark. But your room remains gently lit by imagination, where time slows and memory glows like amber. You feel the shape of your blanket around your shoulders, a slow warmth behind your knees, the scent of old tea, everything quiet, close, and deeply yours. You're far past needing distraction. But a tiny thought bubbles up. Did you remember to feed the dog? No matter. The dog lives only in your imagination, wearing a lace bonnet and holding a clipboard. You've officially crossed into dream-adjacent nonsense. This is a good sign. Your body is now like a book being closed for the night, not slammed shut, just gently pressed closed after a good, long chapter. You are done with the day, even if the day never truly began. Sometimes rest is enough of an accomplishment. Another historical oddity drifts to the surface of your sleepy sea. There were Victorian clubs, yes, clubs formed for those plagued by sleeplessness, mostly women, baymet by candlelight in parlors, wrapped in shawls, sipping lettuce tea and reading aloud to one another. Sometimes poetry, sometimes the shipping news. One club called itself the Midnight Sisters of the Soothing Leaf. Another preferred the Nightbound Ladies Mutual Comfort League, which sounds exactly like what it was. A group of tired women trying to survive the silence together. Their goal wasn't necessarily to cure insomnia. It was simply to make it less lonely. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful part of it all. The way people, especially women, have always woven together scraps of herbs, stories, warmth, and patience to create a kind of sanctuary in sleeplessness. The lettuce was never a miracle, but it was a beginning, an act of care, a signal to the body, we're trying. You sigh again, this time deeper, not out of frustration, but out of surrender. Your muscles no longer twitch with impatience. Your hands pulled into gentle fists beneath the pillow. like small animals tucked in for winter. Your thoughts, though still faintly present, no longer carry urgency. They drift like dust motes in the pale space between waking and sleep. You imagine yourself not in your bed now, but drifting on a slow river in a wooden boat. A river of lettuce water, perhaps, winding through a garden so old and overgrown it has forgotten how to bloom. Vines hang like curtains. The sky is the color of old parchment, and the only sound is your breath, mingling with the hush of the leaves. The boat doesn't rock. It glides forward, slowly. No destination needed. Number, map required. This is what the Victorian women craved. Not just sleep, but this, the release of pressure, the acceptance of drifting, the quiet embrace of doing nothing at all. You let yourself float a bit longer. The weight of the room settles deeper into the mattress. The corners of your awareness fade. The softness of the moment stretches wide, like a field beneath fog. Soon, maybe. Now, maybe in 10 minutes your mind will loosen its grip entirely. The boat will glide beyond your reach, and the lettuce, poor simple lettuce, will have done its humble job. For now you are close, closer than ever. Just stay still. You're doing everything right. Somewhere far beneath the weight of blankets and the soft lull of your thoughts, your breathing has turned shallow, quiet, like the hush of moth wings against a window pane. You don't even realize it anymore, this breathing, this stillness. It's happening without you. The kind of peace your waking self rarely notices, but your sleeping self cherishes like an old heirloom. And you're nearly there now. There's not much left to do but drift. But your mind, playful as ever, reaches back once more to those strange, sleep-hunting Victorians. You picture them now, curled into antique chairs, fussing with teacups, adjusting candle wicks, rearranging lace shawls for the 100th time. All of them caught in that weird little limbo between exhaustion and expectation, between wanting to sleep and needing to prove that you're trying to. And they tried everything. One particularly peculiar method, noted in a lesser-known home manual titled Ladies' Quiet Counsel, involved stuffing one's pillowcase with warm, wilted lettuce leaves and just ... lying very still. The theory was that your body would absorb the plant's sleep-inducing properties through your scalp. Now, modern science doesn't exactly support this idea, but historians still argue whether the smell alone might have created a Pavlovian effect. Lettuce equals bedtime. Logic not required. That's the thing about sleep. The process isn't always rational. It's primal, personal. One woman's lettuce poultice is another's white noise machine. Some Victorian ladies swore by counting fireplace sparks. Others read the dullest book in the house aloud, like naval reports or parliamentary transcripts, and they quite literally bored themselves unconscious. And then there were those who believed dreams could be influenced by what you looked at just before bed. Hence the growing popularity of sleep cards. Tiny illustrations kept on bedside tables, each depicting a peaceful scene. A garden, a moonlit lake, a basket of kittens. Think of them as the Pinterest boards of the 1800s, gently curated inspiration for the subconscious. You smile faintly, your body melting deeper into the mattress. Maybe you should have made your own sleep card. What would it be? A field of lettuce leaves, each shaped like a little hammock. A Victorian woman dozing under a parasol while her maid brews another kettle. Or maybe it's just this you right now, still and warm. The light gone low, the air thick with calm. There's something soothing about knowing people 150 years ago were battling the same things you are. The same mind loops, the same restless tossing, the same need to quiet the day, to hush the mind, to feel okay. And you are. You are so okay right now. Your shoulders have sunk fully into the bed, like they've finally surrendered their usual burdens, even your jaw. That stubborn little hinge of daily stress has softened. No more clenched teeth, no more furrowed brows. You've stepped outside the rituals now. Betise, the poultices, the whispered poems, they've done their work. What remains is just you, and this softness. You picture a Victorian bedroom one last time. Heavy curtains pulled shut against the moon. A porcelain teacup forgotten on a lace-covered table. The scent of crushed leaves lingering in the air. And a woman's eyes closed, hands folded gently across her chest, breathing in slow, even tides. No phones, no glowing screens, just the sigh of oil lamps and the occasional creak of wooden floorboards. That was their soundtrack. That, and the hope that the lettuce would finally work tonight. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. A tiny green hope cradled in porcelain and linen. The effort mattered more than the result. And maybe, just maybe, the act of preparing to sleep is what made sleep possible at all. You understand that now, and your own body quiet. Still, content is echoing that truth. You're not just drifting anymore. You're floating. The final stretch by of this leafy little lullaby. And you're barely here for it, which is, frankly, a compliment. By now, your thoughts have turned to mist. Your breath drapes gently across the pillow like gauze. There's no tension left in your limbs. No hurry, no. Just the deep, patient quiet of someone who's finally allowed themselves to rest. But before you drift off completely, let's allow the curtain to fall with one last wander through this dreamy tale. By the late 1890s, sleep culture among Victorian women had become something of a quiet revolution. Gone were the days of simply collapsing at night and hoping for the best. No, by now, sleep had become curated. Like a museum of rituals, every candle, every cup, every puff of lavender had its place. A woman named Dorothea Weller, a minor but much quoted figure in period letters, once wrote, "To sleep is to lay down the weight of the day with both hands open." She wasn't a doctor or a philosopher just, a tired woman with a thing for letters. But that quote spread like wildfire among London's weary upper crust. It was sewn into handkerchiefs, painted on ceramic tea sets, and eventually printed. On the front page of a homekeeping magazine called Gentlewoman's Companion to the Still Hours. Her secret, A combination of warm milk, lettuce, water, and rubbing a drop of violet oil on her wrists. Oh, an absolute silence for 30 minutes before bed. No conversation, no writing, not even knitting. Historians still argue whether her routine was revolutionary or just unusually disciplined for the time. Either way, it gave structure to a craving nearly every Victorian woman had. Control over something, anything, in a life where most decisions were made for them. Tonight, you can relate. You've created your own little world, cozy, safe, and just removed enough from the noise outside. It doesn't matter if there's lettuce in your system or not. The act of making this space, this calm, this pause, it's powerful. So here's your last gentle stretch. Your head sinks just a little deeper into the pillow, as if gravity is finally doing you a favor. Your feet feel farther away than they did an hour ago, like they belong to someone sleeping beside you. Your thoughts are flickers now, not even words, just brushstrokes of calm, like wind moving through tall grass. You don't have to be awake. Pour the ending. It's okay to slip away. The story can close itself. No fanfare, no dramatic conclusion. Just this. A woman long ago, lighting a candle, pouring hot water over boiled lettuce, and hoping that tonight she might finally find the stillness she's chased for years, and used centuries later, doing the exact same thing. Bend your own way, both of you reaching quietly for rest. And now, let's let it go. Let the words grow softer. Let the air grow still. Let the weight lift. The night is heavy now, not in burden but in hush, like a thick velvet curtain pulled across the world outside. You are wrapped in that hush. You wear it like a second skin, like a memory of calm passed down through generations of tired dreamers. There's nothing more to think about, no place to go, no list to check. You are not late, you are not behind. You are here, and here is enough. Your body is no longer something you carry. It is something you float in, something soft, quiet, trusted. Each breath is longer now, each pause between breaths deeper. The room folds around you, wrapping you in a blanket of stillness. And the story, this odd little tale of lettuce and longing, begins to dissolve like sugar in warm water. The words don't need to end. They simply fade. There's nothing more to hear, but you're still listening. There's nothing more to do, but you've already done enough. Let your fingers unclench. Let your jaw go slack. Let the day drip off of you like a coat too heavy to carry any farther. You made it to the end. Not everyone does. Some are still counting sheep, still wrestling with noisy minds. But you made it here, to the part of the night that finally feels like yours. So rest. You're allowed to. You've earned it. Close your eyes. If they aren't already, let go. Just a little more. And may your sleep, whether letter-shaded or not, be deep, dreamless, and exactly what you needed. End of script. Sweet dreams.